You won't believe what happened on Halloween night. Every year, the air seems to change as October draws to a close, crisp and electric, thick with the scent of burning leaves and the promise of something lurking just out of sight. The streets fill with laughter and the crunch of candy wrappers. Jack-o'-lanterns flicker on every porch, and shadows stretch longer than they should. It's the one night when everyone expects a little scare, but most people never imagine the real terror that can slip through the cracks of tradition. Maybe you've felt it too, the way your heart beats a little faster when you walk past a darkened house, or the way you check over your shoulder when you hear footsteps behind you. Maybe you've told yourself it's just the spirit of the season, just a trick of the mind. But for some, Halloween is more than costumes and candy. For some, it's the night when the line between safe and unsafe, real and unreal, is thinner than ever. Tonight, I'm sharing 8 true Halloween horror stories that will make your skin crawl. These aren't urban legends or campfire tales. They're real experiences, sent in by people who never expected their night to end in fear. Some of these stories have never been told before. Stay with me until the end, because the last one is the most disturbing of all. If you think you know what to expect on Halloween, think again. This is the side of the holiday you were never meant to see. Halloween in our town was always a big deal. Every year, Main Street would transform into a parade of monsters, superheroes, and witches, with families laughing and neighbors handing out candy from decorated porches. That year, I wanted a costume no one would forget. At a thrift store on the edge of town, I found it. A faded, old-fashioned clown suit, the kind with oversized buttons and a ruffled collar. It smelled faintly of mothballs and something else I couldn't place, but it was unique, and I was sure I'd win the costume contest. The night started out like any other. My friends and I met up, our pillowcases ready for candy, and we made our way from house to house, showing off our costumes and comparing loot. People laughed at my clown suit. Some even said it was creepy, but I just grinned and played along. The fun was in the air, and for a while, I forgot about the strange feeling I'd had when I first tried the costume on. As the night wore on, things started to change. I noticed people staring at me a little too long, their smiles fading as I approached. At one house, an old woman at the door went pale and slammed it shut without a word. My friends started to joke that I was scaring people, but their laughter sounded forced. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling of unease grew with every step. Halfway through the night, I realized I was alone. My friends had disappeared, and the street was suddenly empty. The jack-o'-lanterns seemed to flicker more violently, casting twisted shadows across the pavement. I tried to call out, but my voice sounded strange, muffled by the ruffled collar. I started to walk home, but every house I passed seemed darker, every window filled with watching eyes. When I finally reached my house, I saw my reflection in the window. The clown suit looked different, dirtier, the colors faded almost to gray. My face, painted white with a red smile, looked stretched and unnatural. I tried to take off the costume, but the buttons wouldn't budge. My parents found me the next morning, asleep on the porch, the costume lying beside me, perfectly folded. I never wore it again, but sometimes late at night, I see a figure in the distance, wearing that same suit, standing perfectly still, waiting for someone else to try it on. We were a pack of 5 that Halloween, darting from house to house, our costumes bright against the dark. The night was alive with the sound of laughter, the rustle of leaves, and the distant echo of other kids calling out, "Trick or treat." We stuck together, weaving through crowds, our pillowcases growing heavier with every stop. It was the kind of night that felt endless, the kind you remember for years until it changed. It started as a feeling, a prickling at the back of my neck. I glanced over my shoulder and saw nothing but shadows and the orange glow of jack-o'-lanterns. But as we moved down the block, I caught a glimpse of someone standing beneath a street lamp, a tall figure, face hidden by a hood, unmoving. I nudged my friend Sam, but when he looked, the figure was gone. We kept going, but the feeling didn't fade. At every corner, I'd spot the same shape, always just out of reach, always watching. My friends started to notice too. Our laughter faded, replaced by nervous whispers and quick glances behind us. The air felt colder, the wind sharper, and the houses seemed farther apart than before. At one house, as we waited for candy, I saw the figure again, standing at the end of the driveway. This time, everyone saw it. We froze, the bowl of candy forgotten, and watched as the figure slowly turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. We tried to laugh it off, but no one really could. We decided to head home, sticking close together, our footsteps quick and uneven. Every so often, we'd hear the crunch of leaves behind us, but when we turned, the street was empty. The shadows seemed to move, stretching across the sidewalk, swallowing the light. When we finally reached Sam's house, we bolted inside, slamming the door and locking it tight. We peered out the window, hearts pounding, and saw nothing but the empty street. But just as we started to relax, the doorbell rang, once, twice, 3 times. We looked at each other, fear in our eyes, and no one dared to answer. The bell kept ringing, echoing through the house, until suddenly it stopped. We never saw who it was, and we never went trick-or-treating as a group again. Every town has that one house, the one everyone whispers about, dares each other to approach, but no one really wants to enter. Ours sat at the end of Willow Lane, its windows boarded, its paint peeling, and its yard choked with weeds. On Halloween, the legend grew teeth. They said a family vanished there decades ago, and that if you went inside after dark, you'd never come out the same. That year, my friends dared me to go in. Would you have gone inside? We stood at the rusted gate, flashlights trembling in our hands, the night thick with fog and the distant sound of laughter from safer streets. The front door was already cracked open, as if the house had been waiting for us. I led the way, heart pounding, the others close behind. The floorboards groaned under our weight, and the air inside was cold and stale, heavy with the scent of rot and old secrets. We crept through the hallway, our lights flickering over faded wallpaper and broken picture frames. Every shadow seemed to move. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. In the living room, we found a circle of melted candles and a pile of children's shoes, untouched by dust. My friend Jess tried to laugh it off, but her voice shook. Suddenly, a door slammed upstairs. We froze, breathless, listening as footsteps echoed above us, slow, deliberate, impossibly heavy. The air grew colder, and our flashlights flickered out, plunging us into darkness. Someone grabbed my arm, their grip ice cold, but when I turned, no one was there. We stumbled toward the front door, but it wouldn't budge. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped right above us. Then, a voice, soft, childlike, and impossibly close, whispered, "Don't leave." The room filled with the sound of children laughing, but it was wrong, twisted, echoing off the walls. When the door finally opened, we bolted into the night, not stopping until we reached the streetlights. We never spoke about what happened, but sometimes, when I pass that house, I see shadows moving behind the boarded windows. And every Halloween, I wonder if someone else will take the dare, and if they'll make it back out. Halloween was always a big deal at our house. My mom would bake pumpkin bread, my dad would string orange lights along the porch, and my little sister and I would spend hours carving jack-o'-lanterns, each one more elaborate than the last. By the time the sun set, our front steps glowed with grinning faces, their candlelight flickering in the autumn breeze. It was our family's tradition, a cozy ritual that made the house feel safe and alive. But that year, something changed. The morning after we set out our jack-o'-lanterns, one was missing. We laughed it off, blaming neighborhood pranksters or maybe a raccoon. The next night, we carved a new one and set it out with the others. By morning, 2 were gone. My dad checked for footprints in the yard, but the grass was undisturbed. My mom called it a harmless trick, but I saw the worry in her eyes. As Halloween approached, the disappearances continued. Every night, we'd light the candles and watch the faces glow, and every morning, another pumpkin would be gone. No smashed remains, no seeds, just empty steps. The neighborhood kids started whispering about a pumpkin thief, but no one ever saw anything. My sister began to cry at bedtime, afraid that whatever was taking the jack-o'-lanterns might come for us next. On Halloween night, my parents decided to stay up late, hoping to catch the culprit. We sat in the living room, the windows open to the cool night air, the scent of pumpkin and wax drifting inside. Midnight came and went, and just as we started to doze off, the candles on the porch flickered out, one by one. My dad rushed outside, but the steps were empty, every jack-o'-lantern gone. That's when we heard it. A low, guttural laugh from the darkness at the edge of the yard. The porch lights flickered, and for a split second, I saw dozens of glowing faces staring back at us from the shadows, jack-o'-lanterns, but their grins were twisted, their eyes hollow and hungry. The next morning, the yard was empty, and the grass was covered in a thin layer of frost. We never carved pumpkins again, and every Halloween since, we keep the porch dark, hoping the faces in the shadows will pass us by. Halloween night was always my favorite. I loved answering the door, handing out candy, and seeing all the costumes. That year, my parents let me be in charge of the bowl while they watched a movie in the other room. The doorbell rang nonstop for hours. Pirates, princesses, superheroes, and monsters, all laughing and shouting trick or treat. I was almost out of candy when the knocks slowed and the street outside grew quiet. Then, just as I was about to turn off the porch light, the bell rang again. I opened the door to find a trick-or-treater standing alone on the steps. The costume was simple: a black cloak, white gloves, and a smooth, featureless mask with hollow eyes. The figure was small, maybe my age, but I couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl. They didn't say a word, just held out a pillowcase. I dropped the last few pieces of candy into the bag and waited for a thank you, but the masked visitor just stood there, silent and still. After a few seconds, I closed the door, a little unsettled. I peeked through the window, expecting them to leave, but they didn't move. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The figure remained on the porch, staring at the door. I called for my parents, but when they came to look, the porch was empty. They told me it was just a kid playing a prank and went back to their movie. I tried to laugh it off, but when I checked again, the masked visitor was back, standing in the exact same spot, motionless. This happened 3 more times. Every time I looked away, the porch would be empty, but as soon as I checked again, the figure would be there, closer each time. The last time I looked, the mask was pressed against the glass, the hollow eyes staring straight at me. I screamed, and my parents rushed in, but the porch was empty once more. We never found out who it was, but every Halloween since, I see a flash of white at the edge of the yard, waiting, watching, never speaking, never leaving. It was supposed to be the best Halloween ever. Someone's older brother had found an old clearing deep in the woods, far from nosy neighbors and parents. By midnight, the bonfire was roaring, music was blasting from a portable speaker, and everyone was laughing, dancing, and telling ghost stories. The trees pressed in around us, but the firelight made us feel safe, like nothing could touch us out there. As the night wore on, the party started to thin out. A few people wandered off in pairs, others sat in small groups, their faces flickering orange in the firelight. I was with a circle of friends, passing around a bag of candy, when we heard it, a branch snapping somewhere in the darkness. At first, we thought it was just someone coming back from the edge of the clearing, but no one appeared. Then we heard it again, closer this time. The music suddenly seemed too loud, the fire too small. Someone called out, but the only answer was the wind rustling through the leaves. One by one, people started to notice. Conversations died, and everyone turned to look into the trees. The shadows seemed to move, shifting just beyond the reach of the firelight. Panic spread quickly. Someone suggested it was a prank, but no one was laughing. A few people grabbed their flashlights and shined them into the woods, but the beams only revealed more darkness. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, and the group began to huddle closer together. Someone whispered that they saw a face between the trees, pale and grinning, but when we all looked, there was nothing there. Suddenly, the music cut out, and the fire sputtered, plunging us into near silence. In the distance, we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the clearing. Someone screamed, and the group broke, scattering in every direction. I ran, heart pounding, branches whipping at my face, until I saw the lights of the main road. When I looked back, the clearing was empty, the fire out, and the woods silent once more. We never found out who or what was out there with us. But every Halloween, I remember the feeling of those eyes in the dark, and I wonder if the woods are ever truly empty. Halloween night was always busy in our neighborhood, but that year I decided to stay home. My parents were at a party across town, and I was left in charge of handing out candy. By 10 o'clock, the doorbell had stopped ringing, and the street outside was quiet. I settled onto the couch with a bowl of leftover chocolate and a scary movie playing in the background. Halfway through the film, my phone rang. The number was blocked. I hesitated, then answered, expecting a prank call from a friend. At first, there was only static, then a low, distorted voice whispered, "I see you." The line went dead. I laughed it off, telling myself it was just someone messing around, but I couldn't shake the chill that crept up my spine. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, the voice was clearer, but still warped. "Don't look outside." My heart pounded as I glanced at the window, the curtains drawn tight. I tried to call my parents, but the call wouldn't go through. The house felt suddenly too big, too empty. The third call came almost immediately. "I'm closer now." I muted the TV, straining to hear any sound from outside. The wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I checked the locks on the doors, my hands shaking. The phone rang again. "I'm at your door." I froze, staring at the front door, half expecting to see a shadow through the glass. The doorbell rang, long and slow. I didn't move. The phone buzzed one last time. "Happy Halloween." I waited, barely breathing, until the sun started to rise. When my parents came home, I told them about the calls. They checked the phone log, but there were no incoming calls listed after 9 o'clock. No blocked numbers, no voicemails, nothing. I never found out who or what called me that night. But every Halloween, as the night grows quiet, I keep my phone close and the curtains drawn, just in case the next call is for me. I was 12 the year I decided to trick-or-treat alone. My friends had all gone home, but I wanted just one more house, one more handful of candy before calling it a night. The last house on the block was old and crooked, its porch light flickering in the wind. I hesitated at the gate, but the promise of a full-size chocolate bar was too tempting to resist. The yard was overgrown, weeds curling around broken stepping stones. Each step felt heavier than the last, the air colder, the night quieter. I knocked on the door, and after a long pause, it creaked open. A woman stood in the shadows, her face hidden, her voice soft. "Come in, dear. The candy's inside." I should have turned and run, but something about her voice made it impossible to refuse. Inside, the house was even darker. The only light came from a single candle on a table, its flame barely illuminating the faded wallpaper and dusty furniture. The door shut behind me with a heavy thud. I called out, but the woman was gone. The silence pressed in, broken only by the ticking of an old clock somewhere deep in the house. I tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. My heart pounded as I moved through the hallway, the floorboards groaning under my feet. Shadows seemed to move just out of sight, and the air grew colder with every step. I called for help, but my voice was swallowed by the darkness. At the end of the hall, I found a bowl of candy sitting on a table. I reached for it, desperate for something normal, but as soon as my fingers touched the wrappers, the candle went out. The house was plunged into darkness, and I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I never saw who or what was there. Somehow, I woke up on the front lawn, the morning sun burning my eyes. My bag of candy was gone, and the house looked empty, abandoned, as if no one had lived there for years. Every Halloween since, I walk past that house, but I never go near the gate. Sometimes, I see a flicker of candlelight in the window, and I wonder if someone else will answer the door, and if they'll ever make it back out. Halloween is supposed to be a night of harmless scares, a time when we dress up, laugh with friends, and chase the thrill of being frightened in a world we know is safe. But every year, beneath the costumes and candy, something darker stirs. Maybe it's the way the shadows seem to stretch a little longer, or how the wind carries voices that sound almost familiar. Maybe it's the knowledge that, for one night, we invite the unknown to our doorsteps and pretend we're not afraid of what might answer. The stories you've just heard aren't just tales to make your skin crawl. They're reminders that fear is never far away. Sometimes it's a stranger at the door, a voice on the phone, or a shadow in the woods. Sometimes it's the feeling that something is watching, waiting, just out of sight. We tell ourselves it's all in good fun, that the monsters aren't real, but deep down we know better. The scariest stories are the ones that could happen to anyone, anywhere, on a night when the world feels just a little less certain. So as you turn off the lights and settle in for the night, ask yourself, which story will haunt you tonight? Will it be the silent trick-or-treater who never leaves, the haunted costume waiting for a new owner, or the last house on the block that's never quite empty? Maybe it's something else entirely, something you've never told anyone, a memory that creeps in when the world is quiet. Share your own Halloween fears and experiences in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the things we laugh about by day become the shadows that keep us awake at night. Sleep well if you can. Halloween is over, but the stories never really end.